The Sukhoi OKB is best known nowadays for their venerable high-performance heavy fighters. However, before their fame in the flanker and its family, Sukhoi was initially the Soviet Union's primary creator of frontline strike aircraft, from the early days of the Su-2 and Su-6 strike aircraft all the way until even today, with the latest upgrade packages to the Su-34 being applied as we speak. And with such a vast history marked by rapid development, I thought that this could be a fun video to make about the Cold War-era Sukhoi supersonic strikers. So I pitched this idea in the usual votes on our Discord server on what the next video should be, and it won. So without further ado, here is the Sukhoi Supersonic Striker Special. The Sukhoi OKB has created many strike aircraft over its life, ranging from straight ass to straight gas, and many of these planes are in War Thunder. However, during an era of the Cold War where rapid advancements of technology meant that planes saw very little service and were rapidly replaced by more capable designs, many of these Sukhoi strikers would be left in the dust, and sold to bargain bin Air Force countries who proceeded to either completely shit the bed and fail at using them, or in a few cases, use them so well that they put up quite a fight even in today's battlefield. Today I am going to cover the short period of 20 years from the inception of Sukhoi's first supersonic strike aircraft until their last standalone supersonic strike aircraft. That isn't based on an existing fighter, I should say. So, before I get 500 comments asking me, no, we are not covering the Su-34 in this video before anybody asks. That is being saved for the flanker video in the future someday. So, whether you are Pavel Sukhoi himself trying to learn what went wrong with half of these designs, or you just got your brand new Su-22 in whatever tech tree you found it in, then buckle up, because today we're going to take these Sukhois for a spin. The story of the Sukhoi supersonic strike aircraft begins with the Su-9. No, not that one. The other Su-9 that came 10 years later. Why the fuck would you even think I'm talking about the boneless Me-262? Anyways, you see, our story starts with two planes. The first supersonic planes Sukhoi ever made, the Sukhoi T and the Sukhoi S. As the story goes, to experiment with different supersonic wing profiles, these two planes were created and aptly named, with Sukhoi S standing for Strzelovidny, meaning arrow-shaped, for its heavily swept wing, and the Sukhoi T, standing for Trigolny, meaning triangular, for its delta wings. The Sukhoi T and S were both deemed good with their own set of advantages and disadvantages, and as a result, both were pursued further. The T-1 and the S-1 prototypes were both intended to become the Soviet Union's next supersonic fighter interceptors, serving alongside Mikoyan's SM-1 prototype for a new fighter escort, which would become the MiG-19. The T-1 and the S-1 were good and all, but they still had many issues. The T-1 was later refined into the T-2, and then later the jolly, smiling T-3, before being finalized into what would become the T-4, entering service as the Sukhoi Su-9 interceptor. There was also later the T-5, which evolved into the Su-15, and the T-6, which was a very special project that we'll get back to in about 30 minutes. On the other hand, for the swept-wing side of things, shit was starting to hit the fan real quick. Literally. The Saturn Lyulka AL-7 engine, intended for the S-1 and the S-2 prototypes, was very unreliable due to a few issues with the production of its compressor fans, and claimed the lives of one of the test pilots as a result. Seeing that no further aerodynamic improvements could be made and that the Delta Su-9 had already taken the interceptor role, the project for the swept-wing interceptor was quickly fading away and on the verge of cancellation. However, to the rescue came a little idea which people who looked into Soviet aviation history have definitely heard before. Smykalka was the perpetual solution to any problem. Literally, it was the ideal part of Soviet design philosophy, where if a problem arose, you just became flexible enough to find a solution, no matter the cost. And just like most other Soviet aviation engineering marvels of the 50s, Smykalka in this case simply meant copying an already existing design that worked. So the new prototype in the swept-wing family, now dubbed the Su-7 fighter interceptor, was essentially just an Su-9 with swept wings instead of delta wings. Sadly, it came too little, too late, and the Su-7A interceptor was deemed unnecessary due to the Su-9 doing the same job already. So it was redesigned to be slightly smaller than the original Su-9 and would be adapted as a frontline fighter with a few hundred built. However, with the MiG-21 entering production for that exact role at the same time and doing the same job even better, the Su-7A was deemed unnecessary, and that was the death of the Su-7A fighter interceptor program. However, in the background, something malicious was brewing. Aircraft were not the only thing seeing major technological advancements in these few years. Alongside all the military hardware of its time, radars and AA systems were undergoing a complete revolution. Radar tracking, special SPAA, advanced kinds of airburst shells, and to top it all off, the USSR and the US were both working on what in a few years would become the first surface-to-air missile systems. And both of them knew that it was only a matter of time before flying higher and faster no longer worked, and a new countermeasure against these systems needed to be created. Enter low-altitude interdiction. If radars and missiles were going to be so good that they could catch you no matter how high or fast you fly, then why fly high and fast in the first place? Unlike what no-skill, missile-spamming monkeys on the War Thunder subreddit say, there is this thing in real life called multipathing. Basically, if an aircraft flies close enough to the terrain, the deflection of the radar waves against the terrain will bounce and return a slightly skewed contact that's lower where the plane actually is, making targeting systems of the time unreliable enough to hit the aircraft, and that's against perfectly flat terrain. I'm not even going to bring up the major advantages of things like terrain masking behind hills and mountains. And suddenly, after seeing the advent of various interdictor projects around this time, it made a lot of sense. An interdictor aircraft had to not only fly fast, but be maneuverable enough to traverse uneven terrain without plowing into a mountain. Remember, this was very long before things like terrain-following radars and low-altitude autopilots were advanced enough to do the job, so a new requirement was set out by the USSR for a low-level interdictor role aircraft that was primarily going to serve as a supersonic frontline bomber, but also filled a nuclear interdictor role as well, considering that Tupolev was too busy failing at building a competent high-altitude supersonic nuclear bomber, and Myasishchev built... what the fuck am I looking at? Ilyushin at this point put wings on a double-barrel shotgun, which was not maneuverable or supersonic, like requested, and Mikoyan was too busy making that one plane Donut made a video about a few months ago, so this left Sukhoi as the only people who could build this new requested plane. But Sukhoi was already busy with the Su-9, and Smykalka came in again. You see, the Sukhoi 9 was tested as a strike aircraft. However, the delta wings proved troublesome. The aircraft was too reactive at high speeds and bled its speed too much during maneuvers. Remember, this was originally an interceptor meant for going fast and high, in a straight line, towards the enemy bombers, not for weaving through rough terrains or evading enemy air defenses to deliver nukes. Enter the cancelled Su-7A again. a slightly smaller Su-9 that had a swept wing instead of a delta wing, eliminating the flight performance issues that the Su-9 had with low-altitude interdiction. Very quickly, it was realized that this was exactly what the Soviet Air Force needed. The Su-7A fighter interceptor was now modified with more hardpoints and primitive ballistic computers, and one of its original intended cannons was removed. And finally, it was renamed into the Su-7B, the ground attacker variant. The Su-7B had its own set of failures and problems, such as its comically high landing speed, low carrying capacity, lack of basic systems like an ILS, and much more. So Sukhoi got to work on trying to fix these problems, but their solution would not be available until quite a while later, so we'll come back to that later in the video. For now, let's focus on this early Su-7B, the very first variant of the fitter in-game. The first member of the Sukhoi supersonic striker family is the Su-7. Not to be confused with the Su-7. Or the Su-7. And it comes in 3 variants in-game, all of which are in the Soviet tree at a battle rating of 9.3, with 2 being in the tech tree itself, the Su-7B and the Su-7BKL, and 1 being an old removed premium that comes back every once in a while for GE, the Egyptian Su-7BMK. Let's start with the most basic model. The Su-7B, the first Sukhoi supersonic striker to enter service, sits in-game at a battle rating of 9.3, which makes it kinda overpowered, being a supersonic jet and all of that, at a battle rating where it gets to clown on the subsonic jets all day. But then you remember you have worse high-speed performance and acceleration than the F-104 at the same battle rating, not to mention that you have 2 sparky potato cannons with little ammo and 0 air-to-air missiles, instead of a Vulcan and AIM-9Bs. But don't worry, before you get any horrific flashbacks to my review of the MiG-21 F-13, also at the same BR, don't worry, because unlike the MiG-21 F-13, the Su-7 is not straight dog shit. The Su-7 sits at a nice equilibrium between the MiG-21 and the F-104 at this BR, being slightly better at boom and zoom than the MiG-21F due to its strong engine and swept wings allowing it to retain energy better than the delta wings of the MiG-21, while also having a bit more dogfighting performance at lower speeds than Kelly Johnson's pointy penis. Also, instead of a singular potato dispenser with 60 bullets like the MiG-21, you get 2 potato dispensers with 80 bullets each, or 160 total, in the Su-7, which is a major improvement over the joke that is the MiG-21 F-13. Yeah, you don't get any air-to-air missiles, but let's be real here, the flight performance improvements are alone worth the jump from the MiG-21 F-13 at the same fucking BR. There was also a very short period of time a few years ago where Gaijin put this thing at 9.0 for some fucking reason, and it was easily the single most broken plane in the entire game for a while at that battle rating. But that was very short-lived for very obvious reasons, and with a plethora of various 9.3 pointy shitfucks in the Soviet tree, the Su-7s are often overshadowed by the MiG-21, which is pointier, or the MiG-19, which is better as a fighter, or even the Yak-38 and Yak-28B for people who want precision strike, or funny 3,000 kilogram cap remover bombs respectively in ground battles. The Su-7, however, shines in being the ultimate all-rounded balance between all these planes. It can dogfight, much better than most of these planes, only falling behind the MiG-19. It can ground pound considerably better than most of these planes, only falling short of the Yak-28B in bomb tonnage. And while the Su-7s prove a great cast plane for the USSR's already insanely overpowered 9.3 lineup, we play air battles on this channel, so let's talk about the Su-7B there. As stated before, this aircraft banks heavily on a boom and zoom playstyle similar to the F-104A at the same battle rating, and thanks to its incredible engine, you can outrun or catch anything at your battle rating. That isn't an F-104. Also from my experience, the S-5K rockets are too small and too few to successfully use as flares, thanks to your comically large and hot AL-7 engine, but you're welcome to try anyways. I found that the larger S-3 rockets could work as flares against the weaker missiles if you throttle down, but not only do you get too few to make a real difference, but they're too large and add noticeable drag and weight to flight performance. You could also, in theory, bomb bases in this thing, but why the fuck would you when it's one of the most broken fighters at this battle rating right after the F-104? And besides, before napalm was added and base health was recalculated, you couldn't even destroy a full base with this thing. Now let's talk about the last piece of ordnance I didn't cover yet on the Su-7B, the giant S-24 rockets. These giant rockets are intended for popping open fortifications or small ships alike, just as easily. And thanks to having a rocket ballistic computer, but not a bombing computer for some fucking reason, these bad boys should make short work of enemy tanks. But we play air battles, so why the hell am I getting so excited for these, you're wondering? Well, these are basically a 250 kilogram bomb with multiple rocket motors taped to the back, allowing it to be flung like an unguided rocket. But that's not the best part. You see, you can set a distance fuse for these rockets. In English, you can win basically any head-on you enter if you set an 800-meter fuse and time the launch right, then pull away before at gun range, because the blast radius on a bomb with rockets taped to the back usually fucks any plane caught within. Unless that plane's a A-10. Please don't head on the AIM-9L. You have no flares. Hell, you don't even have to use these for head-ons if you just like trolling people like me. And if you love these stupid rockets, then you're gonna love the other SE-7s in-game. You see, the SE-7B was cool and all, but like most Soviet early production variants of planes, it was half-baked. As a strike fighter, it was lacking some important strike tools. Sukhoi set out to fix these issues, and in doing so, created a new SE-7BM variant, which featured upgraded avionics and, more importantly, 2 more hardpoints, allowing you to carry 33% more weaponry. Now in-game, the SE-7BM is not a thing. However, the Soviets did sell these planes a lot, and the slightly modified export variant, the SE-7BMK, is in-game, as an old-removed premium in the Soviet tech tree. The Egyptian SE-7BMK is an old-removed pack premium for the Soviet tree that comes back every once in a while as a GE premium for various occasions. Gameplay-wise, it's basically the SE-7B we just talked about, but it trades a small amount of flight performance due to being heavier, in return for 2 more hardpoints, meaning you get even more S-24s to troll people with, or more bombs if you're a boring person. But I'm not judging you for bombing bases to grind faster in this one, since it's a premium and all. The optimal loadouts in this thing are all a variation of napalm and S-24s, since all the other ordnance is basically fucking useless in air battles. The S-24s are still the trolly airburst plane deleters, and the 360 kilogram napalm bombs this thing gets are great at bombing bases requiring only 2 bombs to kill a whole base. And since the outermost pylons cannot bring napalm bombs due to weight restrictions, this means that you could bring either 4 napalm bombs and 2 S-24s to bomb 2 bases and to kill 2 planes after, or 2 napalm bombs and 4 S-24s to bomb only 1 base and kill even more planes after. Or if you find base bombing to be boring like I do, then just bring 6 S-24s for maximum trolling potential. Also, it's worth mentioning that the SE-7BMK and later BKL get a very slightly upgraded version of the AL-7 engine compared to the older SE-7B. However, the -250 variant of the engine on the BMK and the BKL only had reliability and fuel consumption efficiency upgrades, and it had barely any more thrust than the -100 found on the older 7B. So, it's not really a difference worth getting into details on, since it's literally less than 200 kilograms of wet thrust. All in all, being slightly heavier and sacrificing a little flight performance as such, the extra ordnance is definitely worth the trade-off, but for its price tag, honestly, unless you love collecting the Arab planes like I do, there is basically no reason to spend this much GE on a plane when it comes back on sale. Especially not when you basically have the same thing in the tech tree. This is the SE-7BKL, which is a special modification of the SE-7BM intended as a temporary stopgap to one of the biggest problems with the SE-7, the comically long takeoff and landing distance and the very high speed required for both. The BKL is fitted with special skis on its main gear which allow it in real life to land on completely rough and unpaved dirt fields or snowfields, instead of requiring a special runway like most of the jets. The BKL also featured a special set of rocket booster bottles to shorten its takeoff run by almost 40% in real life. However, it's missing those rocket boosters in-game, and I bug reported them after finding the required sources as I worked on the research for this video, so if those do get added in the future, that would be nice. But besides these modifications, the only difference between the BKL and the BMK is that the BKL has access to larger S5 rocket pods with more rockets per pod, on 4 of the 6 pylons, something none of the other SE-7s have. But besides that, it's literally just the SE-7BMK, just in the tech tree, folded under the SE-7B, not a premium, and with a different camo. All in all, the SE-7BKL is the best SE-7 in-game, as of this video, even if not by much, and definitely the one I recommend people get because not only is it free, but thanks to Gaijin's economy rework for folded vehicles a while back, the SE-7BKL costs half of the RP and SL of the SE-7B, since it is folded under it. The SE-7BKL, in my opinion, is the third most broken 9.3 supersonic jet in air battles right after the F-104 and the MiG-19. But where the supersonic striker really strikes is in ground battles. Yeah, I know, I usually don't do this, but I decided to go play ground battles for this part of the video. You see, while the SE-7BKL does not have any form of guided ordnance, while other countries get much better and much more ordnance including guided missiles at this BR, the SE-7BKL shines in being the ultimate multi-role fighter bomber, being able to do both sufficient strike taskings and also use its great flight performance to remove the usual subsonic slop aircraft that other countries have at this battle rating. Yeah, it's not as good as the MiG-19 as a fighter, nor is it as good as the Yak-38 or Yak-28 as an attacker or a bomber respectively, but the fact that the SE-7BKL can do a bit of all those jobs at once makes it a jack of all trades, yet a master of none. And that's quite important for the Soviet 9.3 ground lineup, with its already existing selection of questionably balanced vehicles. the Su-7BKL takes the job of 3 other planes and puts it all in a single vehicle slot, so you can focus your other lineup slots on things like under-tiered AA, under-tiered light tanks, great MBTs, and a comically under-tiered pancake with missiles. And if you're like me, you can also just ignore the rest of the good tanks in this lineup and bring more fucking planes, because why not? My favorite part about this plane is getting called multiple slurs after toss-bombing the enemy AA, but that's a story for another day. Do keep in mind, however, that at the end of the day, while it is a jack of all trades, it is in fact still the master of none, and there are fighters and attackers at your own BR that do those jobs much better than the Su-7BKL ever will. And in those failings of this fighter bomber at fighting and bombing against dedicated aircraft of these roles, it was about time the Soviets went back to the drawing board to fix the issues of this plane once and for all. But first, we gotta talk about the incredibly stupid temporary solution they came up with. Shortly after the Su-7 fighter bomber was put into service, the Sukhoi Design Bureau was ordered to develop a replacement that was much more technologically advanced, dubbed the Sukhoi T-6. That plane was so advanced for its time that it met a plethora of delays and development problems. Since it was going to be obviously delayed, the Air Force instead ordered a modernization program for the Su-7 in the form of a temporary solution until this new Sukhoi T-6 could enter service. You see, despite being kinda advanced for its time, the Su-7 was still quite rough around the edges with major faults such as its small carrying capacity, compression issues at high speed, lack of guided ordnance, and dangerously high takeoff and landing speeds and distances. This, combined with the rapid advancement of aviation in the late 50s and early 60s, meant that this new program would be aimed primarily at updating the onboard avionics, integrating guided weapons, and shortening the takeoff and landing characteristics. Many options were considered, but ultimately the concept of variable geometry wings were adopted in the end, since it was the popular fad at the time. After a few years of wind tunnel testing in Tsagi, or the Central Air Hydrodynamic Institute of Moscow, in 1963, the Sukhoi OKB, with their new data from Tsagi, created a variable sweep wing technology demonstrator, the S-22I, also known as the Su-7IG. This was just the Su-7BM, but the plane had fixed inner portions of the wings with movable outer segments that could be swept to 28, 45, or 62 degrees. The S-22I first took off on the 2nd of August 1966 for its first flight, and its performance exceeded all expectations by far. The design choice for only having half of the wing be variable geometry resulted in not only reduced takeoff and landing speeds and distances, but it also increased high-speed handling, endurance, and range. It also reduced high-speed buffeting at high angles of attack, a problem that the original Su-7 was notorious for. This massive increase of flight performance left only the other problems of insufficient ordnance to be solved. To begin, it was decided to upgrade the arsenal with 2 new kinds of guided weapons, radar beam riding and laser guided. However, despite fitting this new plane with a range-finding radar in the nose and a very simple designator system, those proved inadequate, so new targeting pods were required. The first of these was the new Delta NG pod, which was essentially a butt plug with a radar inside, zip-tied to one of the pylons to emit a radar beam, which was used by the then new KH-23 missile for guidance. This means that to guide the missile, the pilot had to keep the enemy tank in his crosshair, and the missile automatically steered itself to wherever the plane was facing. Obviously, you can already see the problems with this system. The pilot had to line up an approach and keep his plane pointed at the target to guide the missiles, unable to take any evasive action during the guidance phase. As a result, the secondary category, laser-guided missiles, was supposed to solve this issue. The KH-25L and larger KH-29L were both laser-guided air-to-ground missiles. However, to guide a laser missile, you first need some kind of laser targeting pod, or at least a laser designator. However, during the late 60s, this type of system was still in its infancy around the world, and the Soviets lacked the technology altogether to create a laser designator pod. As a result, we come back to Smikalka, and in this case, the solution to the problem was already a tried and true one. Just point the nose where you want the missile to go. So, because of this, the Soviets creating a targeting system that can best be described as a giant fucking laser pointer pen taped to the bottom of the plane, officially designated the Projector 1 laser pod. It was essentially a giant laser that was mounted to the bottom of the plane to guide laser weapons, except it could not be traversed or slewed, and it faced forward at all times. So to guide the laser missiles, the pilot had to keep the nose pointed at the target. Really starting to see the problems with this one now, aren't we? Anyways, the final problem with the Su-7, being its lack of any air-to-air missiles for its fighter part in its fighter-bomber role, was also mitigated by integrating the brand new R-60 missiles onto this new aircraft. In 1969, the first serial production model began rolling off the production line, and this new plane was quickly designated into the Su-17. Not to be confused with the Su-17, or the Okay, what the fuck is up with Sukhoi and recycling names in the most confusing fashion ever? Anyways, a few more avionics upgrades were applied to this plane, which resulted in the Su-17M2 standard, the first of these new fitters in-game. So let's talk about it now. At 10.7 in air battles and an even lower battle rating of 10.0 in ground battles, people might be confused when they see a Mach 2 capable swing-wing strike fighter at this battle rating. But don't let that fool you, because the Su-17M2 is mediocre at best, and straight dogshit usually. You have no flares, no useful guided ordnance, only 4 rear aspect missiles with basically no range, and shit energy every time you think about turning. And unlike the other flareless supersonic flying brick, which is at a lower BR for some reason despite being better, the Su-17M2 does not have a radar or radar missiles. It doesn't have good guns or even a functional fucking RWR. The Su-17M2 wasn't always this bad, and if the Harrier GR1 didn't exist, I would have said that this plane fell off the hardest since it was added. You see, in early 2021, the Su-17M2 was easily the single most broken plane in-game on release with its great flight performance and a Mach 1 air spawn, which has been removed since then. Leaving this plane is a complete joke. Even for close air support at 10.3, just use the fucking Frogfoot, which gets much better ordnance, better RWR, better air-to-air missiles, better optics, and a shitload of flares instead of none. All at the cost of, being slightly slower. Also, this is the part where I get to mention that the Su-17M2 did have flares in real life, in the form of the SPS-141 countermeasures and jamming pod, which is already in-game, by the way, but Gaijin just doesn't want to give this thing its flares, since it used to be overpowered for like a month, 4 whole years ago. So yeah, the Su-17M2 isn't something you really want to fly in War Thunder unless you either A, literally don't have another option, or B, are into serious cock and ball torture. And it's not just the in-game thing. This plane was, quite shit for the lack of a better term, in real life too. So the Soviets set out to fix the problems of the Su-17s, but we'll get back to that in just a second. As we have learned from shit bricks like the Sea Harriers or the Tornadoes or the F-4C in previous videos, the Su-17M2 falls under the same exact category where the plane itself is not good, but it's still really damn fun when you play it the wrong way. The loadout I bring is 4 R-60s and 4 S-24 rockets with the distance fuse. Besides the usual trolling potential of blowing planes up with the rockets, the S-24B's massive motor also works incredibly as a flare against the AIM-9Ls from those pesky all-aspect slingers. Since you don't get any normal flares, a single S-24B will pretty much always make an AIM-9L miss unless it was fired in direct rear aspect. R-60Ms and Piranhas have an even weaker seeker, so they're pretty much always a one flare from any aspect with the S-24. Alternatively, if you want more flares but less effectiveness against the AIM-9L, you can always bring the big S-3 rockets. But keep in mind these are heavy, and of course the way that they're mounted produces a lot of drag, which really shits on the biggest advantage the Su-17M2 has. It's insane top speed for this BR. Unless you get up tier to face Kfirs or late life F-104s, you're pretty much able to just outrun anything you face. Except for that one plane that takes forever to get up to its top speed and nobody uses as a fighter anyways, except for me, because I'm stupid. Anyways, remember what we said about the Su-17M2 being shit in real life due to the many problems it had? Well, these problems constituted a redesign of the airframe, resulting in a more streamlined canopy, spine, and nose. Of course, a stronger engine was also fitted, and a built-in laser designator was somehow fitted inside the nose, which is actually very impressive when you remember that the nose was also the air intake, and what little space it had was already taken up by the small range-finding radar. The weaponry was also updated, fitting the plane with 2 more hardpoints, and all-aspect R-60Ms, and most importantly, a built-in flare dispenser at last, in the fuselage spine, giving the new Su-17M3 12-hole built-in countermeasures, plus the usual 64 from the SPS-141 pod that Gaijin forgets about. Anyways, the Su-17M3 is not in-game. However, the export version of this plane, renamed to the Su-22M3, is. So let's talk about that. The Su-22M3 is found in 3 tech trees in-game. In the Italian tech tree, it's found in the Hungarian attacker line, and in the Soviet tree, it's found as a squadron vehicle in the form of the Bashar barrel bomber. And finally, in the German tree, it's found as a twin-seat trainer variant, the Su-22U M3K. All of these M3s sit at a battle rating of 11.3 and are pretty similar, so let's talk about them now. First things first, the Hungarian Su-22M3 and the Syrian Su-22M3 are basically the same plane with a different camo in different tech trees. As a matter of fact, the Syrian Su-22M3 used to even have a Hungarian camo for 200 GE on the dev server when it was added, but that was quickly removed since then. Copy-paste so bad that I won't even spend the time to talk about each one in great detail. Not even the Syrian one. The Su-22M3 in-game pertains itself as a السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أنا دونات بشهاب من فصل حلب، واليوم رح نتعلم شلون نطير طيارة سوخوي 22 M3. أولا خلينا نحكي عن السلبيات السيئة موجودة على هي الطيارة. للأسف هذا الموديل من السوخوي 22 عنده كتير قطع مهمة انشالت مشان يسوى أرخص لتنباع على البلاد الثانية. أول مشكلة بنشوفها هون إنه الطيارة ناقصها نظام تصويب بصري، معناتها ما فيك تاخذ صواريخ KH-29T، وهذا الموديل كمان ناقصه مجموعة الطعم الحراري الإضافي الموجودة على هذا الموديل من الطيارات الثانية في البلاد الثانية، مثلا الموديل الألماني في اللعبة. طبعا هذا خطأ لأنه سوريا أضافوا هاي الأنظمة الإضافية بعدين، تحديدا أنظمة KDS-23 من طيارات الميج 23MF وميج 23MLD اللي كانوا قديمين وخارج الخدمة، لزقوهم لطيز السوخوي 22 M3 و M4 بأفضل مثال منشوفه للهندسة السورية. طبعا هاي الأنظمة الإضافية مشهورة كتير لأنه استخدمت في 2017 لما سوخوي 22 سورية استخدمتهم لتهزم صاروخ AIM-9X، أحد أكثر الصواريخ المتقدمة تكنولوجيا في الخدمة الأمريكية. أطلق من طيارة F-18E سوبر هورنت في هذا الوقت. طبعا السوبر هورنت اضطرت تهدر 1.5 مليون تانية من فلوس دافع الضرائب لتطلق صاروخ AIM 120 AMRAAM. بعد الAIM 9X شخ تحته وفشل بإسقاط طيارة عمرها تقريبا 60 سنة. متحيش على الانترنت لسه بحاولوا يقنعوك انه السوخوي 22 ما هزمت الAIM 9X، والAIM 9X اللي اطلقته بهذا الوقت كان بس موديل خربان. في هاي الحقيقة هذا بيقول كتير عن الإمكانيات الصواريخ في أمريكا. على ما أظن لازم يرجع يقوسوا على البالونات بدل الطيارات، لأنه هذا كل الAIM 9X بيقدر عليه. وإذا عندك أي اعتراض على اللي أنا عم بقوله هلأ بقترح إنه تروح تدحشه في بليزك. في أي حالة في ماتش 11.3 السوخوي 22 M3 ما هي من أحسن الطيارات اللي فيك تستخدمها، تحديدا ضد الطيارات الثانية من الأنواع المقاتلة، ولكن لساتها طيارة جيدة كتير بكل الحالات طالما أنت ما عم بتطير مثل الجحش. صواريخ R60M ما فيهم يضربوا على المدى البعيد وعندهم حساسات كتير ضعيفة، بس حجمهم الصغير ووزنهم الخفيف بيسمح لهم يشتغلوا في كتير حالات غريبة، تحديدا بالمناورات الثقيلة والمدى القريب. بالإضافة لهذا عندك مجموعة كبيرة من الأسلحة لتضرب أي شيء على الأرض، من الدبابات، مباني المحصنة والمدنيين. للأسف جايجن ما ضافوا قنابل البراميل، بس لسه عندك أسلحة تانية مفيدة كتير مثل ال KH-25L، KH-29L، S-25L، صواريخ الرادار KH-23، ومجموعة من الأسلحة بدون أي تحكم من أصغر القنابل لأكبر الصواريخ، بالإضافة للمدافع المحمولة والقنابل الحارقة. شخصيا أنا بستخدم 6 صواريخ R60M وصاروخين KH-25L. R60M يستخدم لتقاتل طيارات العدو، والKH-25L بعدين يستخدم مشان تدمر طيارات بعد ما يهبطوا على الأرض بما ما فيهم يدافعوا عن حالهم، مثل القوات الجوية السورية ب8 يوم من ديسمبر 2024. طبعا إذا أنت معاق عقليا أو شخص جبان وما فيك تقاتل الطيارات الثانية، سوخوي 22 M3 كمان فيها تاخذ القنابل الحارقة اللي فيك تستخدمها مشان تدمر أي مباني تشوفها في اللعبة، بدل ما تحارب طيارات العدو وجها لوجه لأنك واحد جبان وبدك هي اللعبة تلعب حالة بما أنت قاعد عم تشرب المرطبات. مع أنه في طيارات تانية أجنحة بنفس الباتل ريتنج تبعها كلهم سيئين كتير مقاتلة الطيارات الثانية، بس السوخوي 22 M3 ما هي وحدة منهم، وعندها كتير قدرات جيدة كمدمرة وكمقاتلة. اللي بحب أساويه هو أقرب على الطيارات العدو، أطلق صواريخ R60M بمدى كتير قريب، لأنه وقتها ما بيكون عندهم أي وقت ليتفادوه. هذا يعني إنه أي طيارة بتروح وجها لوجه معك رح تاكل خرا أسرع من الحرس العسكري اللي كان عم بيحمي قصر بشار. للأسف أكبر مشكلة بهي الطيارة ما هي بالطريقة اللي بتطيرها، بس شلون بتجيب هي الطيارة؟ لأنه هي سكوادرون فيكل، ولأنه الناس اللي بيشتغلوا بجايجن هن عبارة عن ورود خولة معاقين عقليا. الناس اللي بدهم يجيبوا هي الطيارة لازم يجيبوا 20,000 سكوادرون RP كل 3 أيام، اللي معناته مشان تجيب ال 520,000 سكوادرون RP اللي بتحتاجه مشان الطيارة لازم تضيع 2.5 شهر من حياتك عم تلعب هي اللعبة. إهدار للوقت لا يوجد مثيل له إلا مشاهدة باب الحارة. طبعا فيك بس تلعب وتجيب النسخة الإيطالية، أو إذا ما فيك تستنى فيك تدفع فوق 900,000 ليرة سوري بس مشان تشتري النسخة الألمانية رأسا. بس هدول منسورين، فأي شخص عاقل ما رح يكون بده إياهم، صح؟ وطبعا مثل ما الكل بيعرف في وور ثاندر البايس الحقيقي هو البايس السوري. The SC-22M3 in-game pertains itself as quite an interesting plane due to how dogshit it seems at first on paper, yet how fun it actually is when you fly it. With only 12 flares, this plane will teach you the hard way about the importance of positioning and proper techniques in defensive flying, learning how to defeat missiles without using flares and only saving those flares for the missiles which are truly unavoidable otherwise. And this plane presents a dilemma for the player, since your only air-to-air missiles are R60s and R60Ms, which only work well if you get up close and personal to the enemy. This leaves the SC-22M3s in a limbo of playstyle types where it's not an easy plane to master, but a very fun and rewarding one when you do. Of course, if you're coming from the flareless SC-17M2 we discussed earlier, these planes should be no biggie since you're used to flying flareless fitters around here. Not to mention the major upgrade from an SPO-10 to an SPO-15 RWR in this generation of fitters. Also, thanks to the laser sight in the nose and various laser missiles such as the S-25L, KH-25L, and KH-39L, you can tickle enemy planes after they land. And while the Syrian SC-22M3 is missing 2/3 of its flares that it had in real life, this shouldn't be a problem for competent players. However, if you are a pussy and you absolutely need the extra flares, then you can always hop on the Germany Suffers bandwagon and go play the German SC-22UM3K, the twin-seat SC-22M3 trainer found in the German tree which gets 128 countermeasures, thanks to its additional ASO2V countermeasure systems taped on the back, thanks to a little Soviet modification we'll talk about later. But in return, you lose one of your 2 cannons, since this was a trainer model. And finally, the only difference left to talk about is that the Syrian and the Hungarian SC-22M3s get the upgraded Saturn RB29 engine, with over 1,000 more kilograms force of thrust than the AL-21F engine found on all the other SC-17s and 22s, including the German SC-22UM3K. Yeah, the SC-22M3s and UM3K are not the most notable aircraft, but goddamn are they some of the most fun to fly at this BR once you figure out how to play them. If you're graduating from the flareless SC-17M2, then trust me, the upgrades are very much worth it. And yet, this isn't the penultimate fitter. What if we could make this plane even better, but keep it at the same battle rating for some fucking reason? After the M3 came the M4 modification. The M4 featured even more avionics upgrades, but most are not modeled in-game. The 2 you really want to care about are the new RWR, the SPO-15L, whose main upgrade over the original SPO-15 is not modeled in-game. And more importantly, the electro-optical targeting system, which looks the same as the laser designator view in-game, but don't let it fool you, because this now lets you mount new kinds of ground ordnance, such as the TV-guided KH-29T, the single best air-to-air missile at this BR. And for those of you wondering if I made a typo in the script and meant to say air-to-ground there, no I didn't, we'll come back to that in a second, so please bear with me. As for external upgrades and changes, you may have noticed all the ASO2V countermeasure pods taped on the plane. Smekalka. Why come up with new ways to fit extra flares in this thing when you can just take the flare pod from a MiG-21 or a Mi-24 and just duct tape it to the back of an SC-17? Thanks to the 8 new pods added, you get a total of 256 small caliber countermeasures, plus the 12 large caliber in the fuselage spine from before. Also not really necessary in game, but the easiest way to tell apart an M3 and an M4 in real life is by the auxiliary air intake on the front of the vertical stabilizer, a feature added in the M4 upgrade that the M3 visibly lacks. As for ground ordnance upgrades, you get to carry twice as many gun pods, the new S13 rocket pods, and most importantly, the comically large R60.
Hey dog, get some
free kills, only single R60.
You see, this is a normal R60M. And this is his bigger brother, the comically large R60. Yeah, this is literally just a KH-29T that I painted to look like an R60, but trust me, this thing is one of the most fun air-to-air missiles to use at this BR. You see, because the KH-29T by design is literally just a fucking R60 scaled up by about 4 times, it's still quite maneuverable for its weight class. This means that targets flying in a straight line or even maneuvering targets at low speed, the KH-29T is pretty much a guaranteed kill, since it's TV guided and cannot be flared away. All it has to do is get a direct hit, since it does not have a proximity fuse. Now, all you have to do is find someone stupid enough to die to this thing, because they're flying a slow plane that relies on its flares too much. Man, I wonder where I could find such a plane at this battle rating. Oh. Right. So yeah, every game you basically get 2 free kills against A-10s, in addition to your 6 R60Ms, which you could be even more aggressive with now, thanks to having a metric shitload of flares to throw around. All at the same BR as the previous fitters for some fucking reason. And don't worry, if you didn't grind the Soviet tree, then fear not, because Germany suffered and got not 1, but 2 of these things. There used to be a funny bug where the German one was actually a full BR lower in ground battles for 4 whole months than the Soviet one, but that got fixed, so that's besides the point. Did I mention you don't even need to grind this thing? For only 70 whole doubloons on the Gaijin store, you too can get your very own SC-22M4, which is just an SC-17M4 but with a funny skin and premium bonuses. Yeah, I know it says WTD61, but that's just the name of the test and evaluation squadron it's from, and the only difference between the Tech Tree SC-22M4 is the skin. Man, I'm getting some serious deja vu to the last video now. If I had $1 for every copy-paste 11.3 swing-wing fighter bomber Gaijin added as a German premium with a WTD61 skin, I'd have $2. Which isn't much, but it's fucking funny how stupid War Thunder players will fall for this shit twice. Like seriously, what kind of fucking retard would own both of these planes unironically? Oh. Right. Anyways, honestly, if you want a swing-wing shitfuck to grind the German tree, look no further, because the fitter is right there and the Tornado is straight ass compared to it. Remember, with the Soviet 360kg napalm bombs, you only need 2 to kill a base, so you could in theory kill 3 bases in this thing, assuming nobody else steals them. All in all, the 11.3 fitters are incredibly fun, and the upgraded M4s are actually some of the most fun you can have at this BR without flying a one-trick horse or a comically overpowered crutch plane. All of these A-10 kiddies after the winter sale came here to grind their beloved F-15. Nice argument. However, domain expansion. KH-29T. One of the primary conditions for accepting the SE-7 into service was that Sukhoi would immediately begin work on an improved all-weather capable version using enhanced avionics and carrying advanced ground weaponry. OKB 794 Leninets Design Bureau was assigned the development of a highly advanced day-night all-weather navigation and attack targeting system, with a project codename of Puma. This new Puma system would be the core centerpiece for this new Sukhoi advanced attacker. Primary investigation for the SE-7 showed that it was too small to fit all these new advanced electronics, and the development of an entirely new airframe, the Sukhoi T-6 project, was started. The same year, the United States unveiled their brand new F-111 Aardvark, a highly advanced day-night all-weather supersonic attacker fulfilling practically the same role as this new T-6 was going to. So initially, Sukhoi was planning on making the T-6 a conventional aircraft with delta wings to keep things simple and cheap. However, the T-6 project was shelved temporarily and went to the back burner for a while the Sukhoi S-22I project, which led to the aforementioned SE-17 and SE-22, was prototyped and built. Around this time, the engineers working on the T-6 were not making great progress, and the initial T-6 prototype was basically a giant twin-seat, twin-engine MiG-23 prototype with delta wings. However, just like the MiG-23-01 prototype, this was deemed insufficient due to multiple flaws, chief of which was the incredibly high takeoff and landing speed and distance required. As a result, Smichalka came in once again, and to fix the problem, they simply went and copied the other tried-and-true solutions. Once again, just like the MiG-23 prototypes, two more T-6 prototypes were constructed with new short takeoff and landing measures. T-6-1 had lift fans to aid in takeoff and landing, just like the MiG-23-01 prototype, and the T-6-2 had variable geometry wings, just like the MiG-23-02. Eventually, just like the MiG-23-01, the T-6-1 was deemed dogshit because the lift fans were just dead weight, unless you were taking off and landing. They also took up space normally needed for fuel, and they blocked the installation of hardpoints under the fuselage, something which was kinda important for a ground attacker that wanted to carry as much ordnance as it could. This, coupled with the fact that now in 1967 the F-111 had just officially entered service and shown both the advantages and the disadvantages of a swing-wing design for an aircraft of its role, it was decided to make the Sukhoi T-62I, an improved variant of the T-62 with a reworked swing-wing. Once again, work came to a halt because Leninets could not fucking build the Puma system for the love of God. Eventually, they were able to iron out all the problems and hurdles in the Puma system and build it, and the Puma system was composed of a giant Orion radar and a smaller Relief terrain avoidance radar stuck right under in that giant schnauzer of a nose. The pre-production T-62I with the full Puma system and upgraded swing wings first flew on the 17th of January 1970, which is funny because this means this video came out just about time for the 55th anniversary of the SC-24's first flight by pure coincidence. Anyways, it took 4 whole years of state acceptance trials before the new plane, now renamed the SC-24, was greenlit into service, standing as a testament to how advanced its electronics were at the time, at least by Soviet standards. You see, just 5 years ago the most advanced Soviet frontline attacker didn't even have a bombing sight or a proper navigation system, and now the SC-24 was fitted with multiple highly advanced radars in the nose, and an Orbita 1058 onboard computer for navigation, attack planning, and advanced targeting. Now another piece of advanced technology leads us right into a funny story. The Zvezda K-36D ejection seat. This was the first 0-0 ejection seat in the world. In English, an ejection seat that could safely eject a human at 0 altitude and 0 speed. Since older ejection seats didn't work at speeds this slow or even injured or killed the pilot when ejected at this slow speed, they usually had a minimum speed where they had to be used. Now, this wouldn't be a Soviet plane without some wacky design flaw that makes me laugh, and this time it's the hydraulic system and the cockpit ergonomics. There isn't much wrong with these two on their own, but together, well, basically just like almost every other plane, when the engines and APU are turned off, the hydraulic pumps don't run, and the hydraulic pressure in the plane drops. As a result, any unbalanced or heavy parts will move by gravity rather than being held by hydraulic pressure. The biggest part that does this is the tail stabilators. The hinge is noticeably far back, so when hydraulic pressure is removed, they sorta just tip forward due to gravity. Now this wouldn't be a problem normally. I mean, other planes are notorious for doing this exact thing too. However, those planes don't have their ejection handles designed in a way where the control stick could possibly get stuck on it. Yeah, because the all-moving elevators are angled down, the sticks move back, and when the plane's restarted and hydraulic pressure is regained, the sticks move forward. However, due to a slight oversight in cockpit ergonomics, the co-pilot's stick may sometimes catch and get stuck on the ejection handle. Since you can already see where this is going, the story goes that the 63rd Bomber Regiment received their first SC-24s in 1975, and right after that, On the 14th of May of that year, pilot Sergei Kolodiezhny and co-pilot Vladimir Osmanov were preparing for a routine sortie, and they began their pre-flight checks while parked on the ramp. Power was good, engines were turning fine, and suddenly Osmanov went flying. And I don't mean in the plane. You see, this exact problem we had just discussed just happened for the first time in history, and had resulted in the world's first safe 0-0 ejection in service. An impressive feat, just not the one you want to test by accident like this. And in typical Smikalka, instead of grounding the Su-24s for this possibly dangerous flaw, or maybe redesigning the control column so it doesn't catch on the ejection handle, no, they just congratulated Osmanov. They gave him a gold watch and a customized helmet for becoming the first man to perform a 0-0 ejection. Then they added a new step to the Su-24 crew pre-flight checklist to just check if the stick was stuck on the ejection handle or not before starting the engines. And when they realized that that wasn't going to work, they literally just added a piece of string and 2 balls to the ground crew kit that was used to hold the elevators up when the plane was parked even without hydraulic pressure. Also, I do need to point out that this pair of balls were affectionately nicknamed the testicles by ground crew, for very obvious reasons. Also, this wasn't just a Russian thing. I don't know if it was from the trainers or not, but I was told that Syrian Su-24 crew also came up with a similar nickname for it. Also, I do want to point out that this K-36D ejection seat was so fucking good at its job that when the US Navy got their hands on a few and tested them, they literally considered asking American manufacturers to put the Soviet K-36D in new American planes, which was rejected for very obvious reasons, and instead Martin Baker just copied the good parts of the K-36 into their own future ejection seats. Anyways, this isn't the Su-34 we have in-game, but rather the Su-24M, a slightly modernized variant with access to slightly more advanced weapons, and upgraded countermeasure dispensers, and a full missile approach warning system among the many upgrades it got in 11.3. The same BR as the top Su-17M4 and Su-22M4 for some reason. So most people are going to look at this and go, why would anyone fly a heavier Su-17 with less flares and less R-60Ms at the same battle rating? Hey guys, Donut here, and this wouldn't be a meme guide without Gaijin doing something to fuck me over in the middle of production. So here we are about 2 days before I uploaded the video, or at least finished it and went to the post-production phase. And after a little over 2 weeks of delays, almost 3 weeks of delays, BR changes. Yeah, that joke is no longer relevant. The Su-17s and 22s are now a lower BR than the Su-24. As for the rest of the BR changes, why I didn't bring it up earlier in the video is they actually make no fucking difference. The Su-17M2 is still a flareless piece of shit, and all the Su-17s and Su-22s now just get the club A10s even harder. So, no difference to what I just said earlier in the video. So, yeah. Besides that, they're all really fun. Just go play all of them, honestly. And to that I answer in literally all the fucking upgrades this thing got. Extra ground ordnance, more advanced ground ordnance, an incredible built-in targeting system, missile approach warning system, and yeah, while this plane is heavier than the Su-17, it has twice as many engines, so it actually has an even higher thrust-to-weight ratio than the Su-17. Couple that with the fact that you have combat slats and a much faster sweeping wing means that this thing might actually be able to hold its own in a dogfight even better than the Su-17s, especially since the entire wing sweeps now instead of just the outer half. Getting guns on target in this thing isn't that hard. Speaking of guns, say hello to my little friend, the baby Gasha. If you got sick of the shitty potato dispenser spark machine on all the previous Sukhoi strikers, you're gonna love this thing. The Gryazev Shupunov 23-06 is the smaller brother of the horsecock Gasha from the MiG-23 video. Instead of a 6-barrel rotary 30mm nuke dispenser like on the MiG-27, now it's a slightly smaller model that shoots 23mm bullets at a much faster rate of fire. And you're probably thinking this is gonna spark like hell, like all the other Soviet 23mm squirt guns. And while that may be true, this thing fills the air with so much lead that it's not really gonna matter. One of those 10,000 fucking rounds per minute is eventually going to kill the target. And as if the fastest firing gun ever put on a plane doesn't sound cool enough by itself, how about adding 3 more in external gun pods for a total of 40,000 rounds per minute flung around? And if having the single best burr in history isn't your thing somehow, fear not. GPS, laser, TV-guided bombs, you want it? It is yours, my friend, along with all the KH-29s, S-25s, and various other funny weapons you could fit on this thing. Also, I can't help but point out how much this centerline fuel tank looks like a B-57 nuclear bomb. Speaking of nuclear bomb, remember the A-10 spam thanks to the recent winter sales at the time of this video? Well, fighting A-10s in this thing is the definition of a hydrogen bomb versus a coughing baby. They cannot catch you. You have a MOS system to warn you against their pesky all-aspect missiles. You have 33% more KH-29Ts than the SU-17s from earlier to punish even more A-10s per match. And best of all, in a dick measuring contest, you always win because you can literally have over 10 times the burt per burt that the A-10 burts. And this thing takes the playstyle of the SU-17s from earlier and thwacks it across the forehead into something anybody can find fun. Except base bombers. Ugh. You have better guns, better flight performance, better avionics, better sensors, and more trolley toys to fuck people with sideways, upside, and all around. All around, did I mention the centerline gun pod on this thing not only has the power of Burt, but is also traversable? That's right, you could do the gun pod shaker, huh? The gun pod shaker. Give me the gun pod shaker, dude. Shake your gun. You could traverse and depress the gun pod by up to 45 degrees in either direction, and it's aimed using your targeting camera. This means that you don't even have to face the enemy planes to fucking kill them anymore, and since it automatically accounts for lead and bullet drop against whatever target you have locked, oh boy, those subsonic shitfucks won't even know what hit them anymore. Flying this thing against the A-10 horde after the sale is like taking candy from a baby, except the candy is about 2000 RP NSL and you take it from the baby by hitting them with a fucking car. God is dead, and an air-to-air KH-29T killed him. It's only best to hope that those pesky A-10 players had made peace with their gods before that happened, because trust me, when I fly the Su-24, they'll be meeting him real soon. Okay, let's spade the Sukhoi strikers now. Starting with the Su-7. These planes have basically the same modifications tree across the board, with the main difference being that the BMK comes spaded because you are a pay-to-win scrub lord using Arab oil money to skip the grind. In other cases, the Su-7B and the BKL have literally the same modifications tree, except for one modification, which gives you larger S5 rocket pods on the BKL. Unfortunately, as a result, the S-24 rockets are one tier further down for the BKL. But other than that, they are basically the same, so start with the S3K, followed by new boosters and UB-16 rocket pods. Then get the G-Suit, Wings Repair, and S-24 for the Su-7B. On the BKL, instead get the G-Suit, Wings Repair, and then move on to the next tier where you get the S-24. After that, for both planes, get Engine, Cover, EFS, and then go back and work on the rest of the performance mods. Also, if you suck at the game, you can always choose the easy way out, and get the Napalm Bombs to make the stock grind easier at any time, since it's a Tier 1 modification. Moving on to the Swing Wing fitters, because goddamn there's too many of these things. While the modifications tree are quite similar between the fitters, there is still a few notable differences here and there. Starting with the Su-17M2, you have no flares, but you also have incredible top speed, so start with the UB-32 rocket pods because you need them to get better rockets later on. Then get new boosters, B8 rocket pods, and then the G-Suit and the S-24s. Even if you suck at using distance fuse S-24s as air-to-air weapons, still bring a few of these as a final panic button to save your ass, just in case you fuck up your positioning and get an AIM-9L or R-60M launched at you from the annoying subsonic attackers. Finally, get Wings Repair to unlock the final rank where you will get the R-60, Engine, and Cover before going back to work on the rest of the performance modifications. Once again, if at any point you choose to take the easy way out of the stock grind, remember, Napalm Bombs are only a Tier 1 modification. Then, for the SU-22M3 and UM3K, these three planes have almost identical modification trees, with the only difference being that the German twin-seater SU-22UM3K gets an extra modification for the UB-32 rocket pod, which shuffles around the placement of many modifications but otherwise keeps them in the same rank, so it's basically the same modifications grind. Start with flare chaff for the UM3K, to bring a bit of chaff in your 128 countermeasures, while for the Hungarian and the Syrian SU-22M3, start with compressor because not only are you never gonna bring any chaff because you have a grand total of 12 flares, but you also want to capitalize on that heavily upgraded engine found on these models. Then at rank 2, get the R60s and the new boosters, to unlock rank 3 where you will get the G-Suit, R60MK, and wings repair. Finally at rank 4, get engine, cover, and go back and work on the rest of the performance mods and some of the guided ordnance as well to give enemy planes on the ground the Syrian Air Force 2024 experience. And now for the last fitters left, the SU-17M4 and the SU-22M4s, start with the flare chaff to maximize on the add-on pods and bring a bit of chaff since you get 268 countermeasures total. Then, get the R60Ms and the KH-25. You could use the KH-25L to troll people on the runway, but more importantly, you just need it to research the rest of the air-to-ground missiles later. At rank 3, get the G-Suit, wings repair, and KH-29L to unlock rank 4, where the first thing you're gonna get is the big R60, followed by engine, cover, and the rest of the performance mods. Remember, Napalm is a rank 1 modification on all of the fitters if you ever get tired of stock grinding, although this shouldn't be the case with the later fitters since you literally get some R60s and even R60M stock on later models. Or you could just buy the German premium one, since that already comes spaded, you little pay-to-win shitfuck. And at last, for the Fencer, start with the Missile Approach Warning System. Not only does this give you a MAW system, like the name says, but it also upgrades the countermeasure suite from the 24 flares found on the stock SU-24 model to the 96 flares total that you should have as a SU-24M model, thanks to the large APP-50 countermeasure dispensers in the back. Then, get the G-Suit, before going back to get the KH-23 and KH-25 missiles, which are required to get the big R60 later. At rank 3, get the R60M modification, which in reality just gives you the APU 60-2 launch rail, which allows you to bring twice as many R60Ms, a total of 4, instead of the 2 you get stock. And finally, get the wings repair, and the KH-29L, followed by engine, to unlock the final rank. There, you will get all the funny troll toys, so start with the KH-29T, followed by the SPPU-6 traversable gun pod, then get any other performance modifications left. If you play ground battles, do take a detour and pick up any kind of guided bombs this thing gets, cause damn, it's a great cast plane for 11.3 USSR ground. And there you have it. That's the Sukhoi Supersonic Striker spaded and set to not find another word that starts with S to end the sentence. That's the Sukhoi Supersonic Striker family, as of the storm warning update. We have covered many planes with troubled development or hilarious stories of turnaround success on this channel before, but the Sukhoi Supersonic Strikers instill a new moral to be learned from these stories. Don't run from your challenges, even if they're seemingly impossible at first. For better or for worse, even if you make mistakes along the way, as long as you faithfully face them down, then maybe, one day, you can choose which challenges you want to take on, and get a chance to prove your worth to the world. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, it means a lot to me. And maybe also join the Discord too, so you can vote on what the next video should be about. Oh, and before I get 25,000 comments about it, no, I didn't forget the SU-25. This video is called Supersonic, Sukhoi Strikers, and the SU-25 is not supersonic. I could make a video about all the SU-25s in the future if enough people vote for it, but until that happens, go out there, don't crash on takeoff, and go show those pesky A-10s the big R60 on your hip. See ya next time.
その手を伸ばして私を感じて心はそばにあるから唇重ねて疲れた体を優しく包んであげる Close your eyes to surely find the memory of love 気まぐれに変わる定めさえ愛まで奪えない Love is light in the dark show the way like stars 今は虚しく傷ついても 「